Maybe we should do both.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
There it is, Tom. I got it. Couldn't hear it yesterday. Wasn't able to do it, but got it today.
I don't know that everybody heard your do. So for those people, there we go. For those people listening on the podcast, that's Bob's little introductory. That if you really want to check out what that is and what that's all about, you're just going to have to go to Facebook or YouTube and watch, so that you can see what the intro is all about. Good morning, Bob. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. How are you, Tom?
I am well also.
Awesome.
And welcome everyone to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast, where we try to provide that one thing to help you move forward to find your own unique pathway to success. And one of the ways, well, I guess we should recognize, Bob, that you are once again in a new location. Do you want to?
I am. I'm a man on the move, aren't I?
You are.
But
where are you today?
I'm in Delaware.
Nice.
A couple of miles away from the Atlantic Ocean in a place called Bethany Beach. It is one of my favorite places in the world, and I will be here for a couple months. So I'm real excited.
And for those of you who don't know or just tuning in, one of Bob's dreams, I would say one of his renegade dreams, is to find a house, live on the beach, and not have to deal with cities or things like that.
Yes.
Only when he wants to, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
So Bob, for the next few months, gets to live out what he hopes he will have once he achieves his dream. So
yeah, how's that for being a renegade?
I love it. And I'm sure that each of others of you have a similar dream. So hopefully, as you consider what that looks like, you won't be scared to try to find it. You won't let others try to stop you from considering it because they don't think it's right. They don't think it's what makes sense. That's not what everyone else does. That's what we do as renegades. We're willing to take our own unique pathway to success, create dreams that are ours and ours alone. And we do them because we want to make a difference. We want to have an impact, or we want to do something that we believe is what is real for us. So, little introduction to what a renegade is. And
like it.
A little foreshadow. We're going to talk more about that as we go through September. And in September, we're going to take a step back as we get into actually, this is September. I forgot. I keep forgetting that it's September.
I was going to ask you about that. I was wondering what time zone you were in.
Correct. So after Labor Day,
yes.
Our topic for September will be about being a renegade. And so I think if you are not quite sure why you're here or how you got here or what this is all about, September will be a great month for you to binge on the podcast and hop in the Facebook group or Facebook or YouTube and check this out. So a long introduction, but hopefully one that added some value to someone's day. So, Bob, one of the things we always do every day, we celebrate. It's a great way to start to get your mind in the right place. What are we celebrating today?
Well, this one is a renegade in a way. So it's National Blueberry Popsicle Day. National Blueberry Popsicle Day. And I didn't know much about this, but in San Francisco back in 1905, an 11-year-old guy, Frank Epperson, was outside on his porch mixing water with white powdered flavoring to make soda. He went inside, left it on the porch with the stirring stick still inside it. That night, the temperature reached a record low, and the following morning, he discovered what would later become a popsicle. Now, that was in 1905 when he was 11. In 1922, he introduced what we would come to know as a popsicle at a fireman's ball, where it was a huge success. Then a year later, he made and sold his frozen treat on a stick at an amusement park in Alameda, California. He applied for a patent in 1924. So he started in 1905 when he found this, and it took him almost 20 years to get a patent for his frozen confection, which he called the Epsicle because his name was Epperson. But he later renamed it the Popsicle. Now that is a renegade through and through.
Well, what's interesting is, so that's kind of the history of the Popsicle, right? Which is great. I mean, and he clearly is a renegade, somebody who set out to do something that he wasn't doing anything against someone else. He wasn't being reckless. He was trying to find a different way.
Well, and he discovered something
and
ran with it.
And it's interesting because blueberry is not a flavor I would have thought of for
the popsicle. No,
grape,
orange, cherry. Yeah,
I know there are blue ones, and sometimes there are the red, white, and blue ones that you see a lot around Independence Day. Yet I'm not sure, and I guess I've seen blue ones. I just guess I always called them blue, not blueberry.
Yes. So there you have it.
Well, what I love the fact is that it is a great story, and it made me think that maybe we ought to tell stories about renegades as a good way. That could be a semi-regular celebration. Is when there's one of those crazy days like yesterday that the National Registry celebrates, like, what was that again? No, there's no rhyme or reason day.
You're still bitter about that.
We can substitute that with celebrating a renegade. I love the idea that it's someone that is completely no one had ever heard of. I can't imagine.
Well, Tim probably has heard of him.
Well, that is true. Tim is our resident.
Because he remembered Diatomaceous Day. He gave me a little lesson on that later in the day.
He's a wealth of information.
He is a wealth of information. He is
great that he's a good follower.
He's a good follower, and he keeps us honest.
So here's the interesting thing. Our conversation this week is about when they say yes, whether that's our customers, our clients, our staff, our team, our supervisors, anyone who at some point affirms something that we were trying to sell, share, offer to them. And what's fascinating is this person worked and finally got his yes. What's interesting is he was trying to create something completely different. And when he finally got the results, which weren't what he thought, he decided to go with it as like, okay, this is what it is, not what I thought I was going to get. And I think that's the conversation today is when they say yes and how to deal with it. And I think what's interesting is that what he received was a yes, that there was something in the creation he had. It wasn't what he thought it was going to be. And it actually turned out to be something even more beneficial to him. And I often wonder how often we see something. He could have seen that as a no, right? Nah, I didn't create soda, so that didn't, or pop, as we like to call it, people who grew up in upstate New York. He could have just seen, well, I guess that was a failure. Instead, he chose to take that as a yes and say, okay, now how am I going to deal with it? Here's how, and the ways that I can take what I have and move forward. So I think that's one way. There's obviously, I think, the more regular thing that how you deal with when someone says yes. And there's a whole lot of information that I know we'll dive into. So why don't we start? Why don't you share some of your thoughts, Bob, about how to deal with someone who says yes?
Well, I'm going to go back to Mr. Epperson because I think it's really instructive in terms of the yes. 1905 is when he gets this concoction. Okay, 1905. He's 11. I don't remember very many things I did when I was 11. So he's already setting himself apart from other people. He's trying to make soda. And he notices that it froze overnight. It takes him another, 17 years, because it was 1922 when he finally takes it to a fireman's ball. And as the piece I'm reading says, it was a huge success. So he got a yes 17 years later. Now, in those 17 years, I don't know what he did, but I'm going to guess at least one person said, Frank, what are you thinking? This is crazy. No one wants, really? let it go, dude. Not a good idea. But he hung with it. And he got that yes in 1922. And a year later, he went to an amusement park and started to sell it. And then a year after that, he applied for his patent. So you're talking about almost 20 years for him to get through this process. And that, to me, Tom, when we talk about a yes, we're often like, well, I'm going to call this guy and see if he wants to work with me. Is he going to say yes or no? What about the yes that might take 20 years to get? And I think that's a real lesson. It's so funny to me how some of these days come up and they fit right into what we're talking about. But here's a guy who really almost 20 years waited for a real serious yes. Because once you get the patent, that's a big yes. That's not just people buying it from you.
Right.
That's the government saying you've got something unique and you own it. You know, once he had that in 1924, no one else could create a popsicle. You could create something similar, but not that exact thing. And think of how ubiquitous popsicles are now. I mean, it's hard to even think. It's hard to even think of a world where popsicles just aren't known by everyone.
Sure.
You know, if someone said to you this afternoon when it's warm, hey, Tom, you want a popsicle? You're going to be like, yeah. Is it blueberry? Although I don't really like the idea of a blueberry popsicle.
Yeah, me neither.
But I think that's part of the whole issue of yeses is it may not come this year or next year or 5 years later. And it may not be to what you were actually trying to create. He was trying to create soda.
Right.
And he ended up with a popsicle. Who's to say that you're not trying to create one thing today and what will ultimately sell to someone is a derivative of that or a byproduct of that or something completely different 5, 10, who knows, 25 years later.
Sure.
And I've never really thought about it in that framework until just now.
Well, and I think one of the things about is that sometimes we get a yes, but not to what we thought we were getting. And I think sometimes we take that as as not being successful. When in reality, that's just maybe be the first step of many. You know, a lot of times people they don't have the know, like, and trust built up yet. And so while they may say yes to a smaller thing, might be they just say yes to meet with you. You know, we've kind of been talking around when someone buys in terms of yeses or nos, or someone gives a sort of ultimate answer. They might just say yes to meeting with you. So that's the first step in how to deal with that and realize that, well, that wasn't necessarily what you thought the result was going to be. You thought maybe the result was going to be, oh, they're just going to buy from me right away. And they just want more information. And I think so often we take more information as they're not interested. And rather than, I got a yes, how do I keep working to get the next yes, and then the next yes, and then the next yes, so that I can ultimately get from where I am to where I want to go, even though it might take, like it did with Mr. Popsicle Guy, 20 years for it
Mr.
to be.
Epperson, Frank Epperson, not Mr. Popsicle Guy.
I couldn't remember his
like
name.
The guy that comes down the street with the really annoying loud radio playing, you know, carnival themes. Mr. Popsicle Guy is different, Tom.
Okay. All right. I couldn't think of his name. So Mr. Popsicle Guy seemed to fit. Anyhow, I think that, you know, one of the things is, the other thing I was thinking about with this topic, which is a little different spin, is, and we touched on this briefly yesterday, is that yes is really the start. You know, sometimes I think people think, okay, I got a yes. Someone made a sale, and now I don't have to do anything ever again. I just collect my money and move forward. Or I start my project and I can move forward. And so often the yes just is the first step. And, you know, it's how do you take that yes from just, okay, there was a transaction, or there was a decision, or there was a donation. How do you take that from just that one-time thing to developing a relationship, or developing a process, or developing, you know, a way to get further along, really to build a relationship? I think that's, you know, what we're talking about, is it's not just a transaction. It's how does that transaction turn into something that is even greater? And and I think that's a key piece of it, is that the yes is just getting started. The yes allows you, and how you take that yes and move forward can be critical to how much overall success or how quickly you're going to reach and follow and complete the pathway that you started out on.
I have a third spin on this one, Tom.
Okay.
I was thinking about Mr. Epperson, as you like to call him, Mr. Popsicle Guy.
I like Popsicle Guy better, actually.
And it occurs to me that he was saying yes to himself over those 19 years. And he wasn't allowing other people to say yes to him. Did you get there too?
I did a little bit. I was thinking about it, although I went back and thought about when they say yes. So this is somebody else saying yes to us. And maybe they is the inner voice inside of us that is afraid to say yes.
To make the full commitment.
Correct. And I think that's very hard. And I think often the biggest challenge, I think sometimes, to saying yes to ourselves is, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with stepping out and being like, okay, because usually when you say yes to something that's about you, it's hard. And it took a lot for you to get to that point. And I think dealing with what does that look like is challenging. You know, it goes back to our conversation about success. And is it the fear of success or fear of, I think, not success? I hate to use that word failure, but and I think that there's that piece of it is, okay, what might happen, if once I say yes, or once they say yes, great. How do I now do the work? How do I deal with what's to come? How do I deal with the success that I'm going to have? Is once they say yes, that means my business, my leadership is in a different place, because now I'm actively seeing the results of all that hard work. So I think that it's a fascinating conversation, and we could probably talk for weeks.
Well, think about how many times someone came to Frank Epperson's house and he's like, hey, try this. Like, really, Frank, come on. What is it? Oh, it's an Epsicle. A what? And they go, dude, pour me my drink, or I'll take a soda, or why don't you have iced tea, or something like that. And he's trying to hand out these popsicles to people. Over the course of almost 20 years, how many people do you think he said, would you like one? And they taste it and like, what is this? Not because it was good or bad, just completely out of their frame of reference. So they couldn't even objectively review it. I mean, this guy, when you think of a real success story, this guy's a huge success to me. I mean, I'm fascinated by this 20-year quest. Like, I'm going to dig deeper into him. I want to know what he did for those 20 years. I want to know if he was like a, food analysis guy, or if he was like completely in another field altogether.
Well, think about it. He was 13 when he started. 11, sorry. This was 19, what, 04?
04.
I'm not sure there were a lot of food analysis people who were not yet a teen, or even over the time when he was a teen.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He wasn't, the framework that he had to work within didn't really support his idea at all.
Sure.
Remember, houses didn't even have refrigeration until the 50s, right?
I have no idea.
I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. Refrigerators weren't like in the early 1900s. So here's this thing. Unless you have an igloo, you're really out of luck.
And in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Right? You said he was in San Francisco, so that's even harder. Tim, I would like you to fact check on when refrigeration came into the average person's house. That would be really helpful for us to be able to share. Because I do think that I thought about that, but I had no concept of when that was, refrigeration. And the fact that he created something in an area where the weather is warm that you would have to keep frozen was clearly a challenge.
He had a lot of things working against him, and he still found a way. And to me, when we talk about being a renegade, if you're new to all this with us, this is what a renegade is. Someone who just figures out a way.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a great story that, to me, it's a real American success story. As good as Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Elon Musk and the whole canon of people, Henry Ford, because Henry Ford was about the same time.
Sure.
And think about that. You don't hear this guy's name, but Henry Ford, man.
I could remember Henry Ford's name. I can't remember Ebersol's name. Now I can.
Henry Ford. Come on, dude.
No, I said I could remember Henry Ford's name. Ebersol sounds good. I never heard it.
I agree with you, Tom. We could talk for the rest of the day about this, which is great. I love that we were able to spark real discussion that wasn't what I expected it to be. I want to work in Tim's comments. Tim said, do your best to avoid making the first step a misstep. I hate it when that happens. And then he offers us early forms in the 1890s. This is refrigeration, but it was up to the late 40s before it started to become, yes, he pulled out my word from earlier, ubiquitous. There you
I'm
go.
glad
Thank
he
you,
did.
Tim. Tim's working an inner game here. I love it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think he was trying to make sure that all of our listeners, watchers knew what ubiquitous was and what it meant.
Ubiquitous, yes.
Ubiquitous.
So, Tom,
yes,
this
Bob.
is the important part of this. We've talked through this. What's your one thing? Something we can take to the bank, really ponder today and go, aha, that's what I need to do.
Yeah, I think when people say yes and how you deal with it is, I'm going to go back, and maybe I used this yesterday, and I'm going to apologize, but I think it's worth it. Is that to me is the start. It's the opportunity.
You did use it yesterday, but you can put an exclamation mark on it.
Okay. Well, a little differently, because I think so often we think of yes and we just feel like, okay, we can move on. My coach is amazing at what I would call onboarding. Or, so there's that time between usually when somebody says yes and when you really dive into whatever it is, whether the team starts the project, whether, the person takes the product home and opens it, whether the services you provide are happening today or later. If you call up and say, hey, I want to bring my car in for service, or here's a better way, call and ask the mobile auto service to come out and deal with your car to provide service. There is a time lapse, usually. And so often most organizations just set the appointment and then show up whenever it was. Well, what happens in between that time is a lot of times the people who say yes have concerns and have questions and doubt. And so wow, that's going to be a lot of money. Or wow, I just made a big commitment. Am I really able to fulfill that? Or am I really going to benefit from this? And so I think so often we get the yes, and then we feel like things are done.
Look, there's Tom, Casey. Casey wants to be in the program today.
For those of you who are listening to the podcast, Casey is a cat, and the cat is with Bob at the beach. And so I'm sure we will get to know Casey very well over there.
No, I think Casey's just trying to find any consistency in her life, new surroundings. So
fair enough. So I think that there's that opportunity, and my coach does an amazing job of making you feel really good about the decision that you made. And I think that is the opportunity that's out there for us, is that when we get a yes, how do you stay connected and engaged with that person so that they don't have buyer's remorse, and so that they are ready to dive in because they know the impact that this decision is how it's going to benefit them. So I think that's the piece that I'll share with people today.
Nice. I like that. I'm going to offer something a little different, which is it's a marathon, not a sprint. And Mr. Epperson, or Mr. Popsicle Guy, as you know him as, he proved that out 20 years in a really revolutionary idea in its own way. And he kept getting yeses, something inside him, or he fought all the no's. but he found a way to keep going to get what he ultimately thought was something really worthy of being in the world. And here we are 100 years later, and it's,
Well, a thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I could go outside right now and ask 10 people, hey, what's a popsicle? And they'd be like, oh, I know what it is. Who invented it? I don't know. It just showed up.
Mr. Popsicle Guy.
Mr. Popsicle Guy. All right, Tom. So would you like to bring this home today? See, I changed it.
You changed this.
I can learn.
You didn't want to offend your cat to say wrapping this puppy up. That's all right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on today's Antidote. If you are listening to this on a podcast, your favorite podcast provider, please subscribe, comment, like it, or share it with someone else who you think is maybe like Mr. Popsicle Guy and has an idea but doesn't really know
that sounds so creepy.
how to deal with when they get a yes, or and once they get a yes, even if it's a small yes, how to move forward. So please feel free to share that with someone who might think that they're a renegade and might find a way that this antidote, this show, can provide the one thing they need to help them continue traveling along their own unique pathway to success. If you are watching this on Facebook or YouTube, please, again, feel free to share with others. You can also join our Facebook group, the Ring of Renegades. It's easy to do. You just go to Facebook, search for Ring of Renegades. Now, it is a private group, as Bob loves for me to hear me say. So you just have to ask to join and tell us why you're a renegade. And then you can become a part of this growing community where we are helping others who have dreams, ideas, goals, and are looking for confidence that they need to get those yeses so that they can move forward and find their own unique success. So with that, I hope that we will see you inside of the Facebook group. If not, we'll see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, for our next edition of today's Antidote. Have a great day, everyone.
Hey, embrace the renegading you. I went.
Thanks for listening to today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com.